Hello, everybody, and welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet. And tonight we're going to be looking at a piece from the latest issue of The Heron's Nest from poet Polona Oblak with the first line of adding ellipsis. All right, you know what that means? It's time to sit back, relax, grab yourself a tasty beverage, and let's haiku. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. It's good to be with you again for another episode of Haiku Talk. And let's get right to the poem, shall we? The poem by Polona Oblak goes like this. Adding ellipsis to my draft. Cherry petals. Adding ellipsis to my draft. Cherry petals. Now, this piece speaks to my heart as somebody that does a lot of craft work with my poems. I definitely am not somebody that just puts down the poem on the first draft and calls it a day. That does happen on occasion, but more often than not, poems will go through a couple drafts, sometimes several of several. And this poem really kind of speaks to that sort of craftsmanship, even with the word draft right in the poem. And I really appreciate that. So this is a poem for poets, I would say, more than anybody else. And a poem for poets, or Ars Poetica, which is a poem about about poetry, really kind of speaks to that process of what we do and we capture when we edit. And it's just a kind of a fun little piece that I think captures it really well and, brings it all home in that third line. So the poem does follow the fragment and phrase format, with the first two lines being the phrase, which is adding ellipsis to my draft, with an ellipsis, and then the fragment being cherry petals. And so let's look at this line by line and show how it works. So that first line of adding ellipsis tells me right away that this is a poem about poetry, a poem about writing, because there's no other real way. I mean, that's what you're doing when you're adding an ellipsis. You do that in writing. Now, I don't know what's being written. I don't know what the whole context of this poem is just yet, but adding ellipsis puts me right there with my haiku sketchbook when I'm pen in hand, and it's gotten me, right there, ready to go. I'm adding an ellipsis, okay? Then you get to line 2, which is to my draft. To my draft. Hence completing this notion that this is a poem about writing. And you're adding ellipsis to the draft of a poem. And what this also suggests to me, because we have suggestive language here, is that there's been more than one draft. There's been more than one way to try to write this poem. And the previous draft or drafts did not have the ellipsis in it. And finding the ellipsis by adding it, and which is actually fun that it's actually then added to the end of line 2. So it's not only speaking about the drafting process, but then we see the result of that drafting process within the poem, which is fun. It's a thing within the thing. I also love stories and poems and things where, you have a thing within a thing, a story within a story, a poem within a poem, a moment within a moment. It just makes me smile. It's clever, and when it's well done, it's just a delightful thing to experience. And then we get to line 3, which is the Kigo, which is what the poem is trying to capture, and which is why the ellipses were needed, and why the whole adding this to the draft makes the poem work. Is that third line is cherry petals. Cherry petals. So in writing a poem about cherry petals, you think about them falling, moving, having an ellipsis in there helps with sort of almost like a concrete poetry moment where you see and feel and experience petals with those ellipses. And so it's just puts a nice bow on this poem of what's trying to be captured, and it does help you. It's just a wonderful poem about poetry. The moment writes itself. The editing puts itself into the poem and makes the poem complete, and it's just a well written, packaged poem. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, I love it. Like I said, you go through, I read the issues and kind of put tick marks about things that I like and make notes and stuff. And this is one I just came back to again and again because we don't get very many Ars Poeticas in haiku, and especially one that works as well like this, where the addition of the ellipsis in the draft completes the poem that you're about to finish. And it's just really, really well done. And I just cherished it, wanted to share it, and wanted to keep that in mind, that this type of poem can be written. Again, like all poems, for them to work, you have to write them well. This is a good example of how to write a poem about writing well. And it's just really delightful. And that's it for today's haiku talk. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And with that said, have a great day, everybody. I hope all is right in your world. I hope this helps bring a little levity to wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Because in uncertain times, it's important not to forget the things we hold dear, the things that we cherish, the things that bring us delight and joy, because those are the things that you fight for. Those are the things that you want to continue, want to persist, want to ensure can go on. And if we lose sight of those in the noise, we lose sight of who we are and what we are. So with that, add some ellipses to your own lives, and cheers, everybody. Cheers.